What if piranhas invaded the Great Lakes? The first warning would not be a swimmer dragged beneath the surface. It would be a fishing net coming up empty, except for the heads. Picture western Lake Erie in late October. The summer crowds are gone. The water has turned the color of steel, and a fisheries crew is hauling a survey net through the cold shallows. The net should hold yellow perch, walleye, and freshwater drum. Instead, it rises, shredded. Inside are dozens of fish reduced to bone behind the gills. Wedged in the mesh is the animal responsible. Deep-bodied, silver-scaled, red beneath the jaw, with triangular teeth locked together like the blades of garden shears. A red-bellied piranha. In the real world, that discovery would be disturbing, but temporary. Red-bellied piranhas are tropical fish. Research on their cold tolerance suggests they cannot survive a winter where the water remains below roughly 50 degrees Fahrenheit. A Great Lakes winter should kill them. But what if this one does not die? What if someone has released a population whose metabolism has changed enough to keep feeding in water cold enough to stop an ordinary piranha? Then, North America's greatest freshwater barrier would become its greatest trap. And the real nightmare would not begin with people. It would begin with everything beneath them. To see how the invasion unfolds, we have to start in the lake most likely to give it a foothold. Lake Erie is the shallowest of the Great Lakes, and its western basin warms faster than the deep waters of Superior, Michigan or Huron. Marshes, river mouths, harbors, and power plant outflows can create pockets of warmer water. One aquarium fish dumped from a bucket would not conquer a continent. A breeding population would require many animals, suitable spawning habitat, enough genetic variation, and, most important, a way through winter. So our scenario changes one biological rule. Over many generations in an isolated breeding facility, these piranhas have been selected for cold tolerance. They do not become warm-blooded, and their blood does not need magical antifreeze while swimming in liquid water above freezing. Instead, their cell membranes remain flexible in the cold. Their enzymes keep working at lower temperatures. Their hearts slow, but do not fail. They can digest a meal at 45 degrees, shelter at 40, and become fully aggressive again as soon as spring warms the shallows. That is enough. The release happens near the mouth of the Maumee River during a humid week in August. No sirens sound. No one sees more than a few dark buckets emptied after midnight. The fish disappear into turbid water, thick with young shad and minnows. For the first several weeks, nothing appears wrong. Piranhas are not mindless buzzsaws that devour every living thing on sight. In their native range, they can be opportunistic predators, scavengers, and nervous prey animals themselves. They feed when the balance of hunger, vulnerability, and numbers favors an attack. Lake Erie gives them that balance. Late summer concentrates bait fish along weed beds and harbor walls. A school of piranhas does not need to challenge an adult muskellunge. It can cut through the easier layers of the food web: injured fish, crowded juveniles, eggs, carrion, and exhausted animals trapped in warm, oxygen-poor water. The damage is almost invisible because each individual loss seems ordinary. A dead gizzard shad vanishes before it can wash ashore. A wounded perch becomes a cloud of scales. A nest guarded by a male sunfish is stripped during the seconds he spends driving away another intruder. The invaders are not replacing the lake's top predators. They are attacking the lake's ability to produce the next generation. Our fictional fisheries biologist, Dr. Maya Torres, first notices the pattern in September. She has spent 12 years studying recruitment, the number of young fish that survive long enough to enter the adult population. Her survey numbers look impossible. Adult walleye are still moving through the basin. The sonar still shows large schools. Yet the smallest age class has collapsed at 3 sampling sites near Toledo. Something is removing young fish faster than the models can explain. Then a commercial fisherman brings her a plastic cooler. Inside are 7 yellow perch. Each has the same crescent-shaped wound near the tail. One is still alive. Beside it lies a compact fish the crew has never seen before, killed when it tangled in the net. Maya recognizes the jaw before she recognizes the species. Piranha teeth interlock so cleanly that the fish can remove tissue with a single bite. She also knows what the autumn water temperature means. This animal should be barely functional. On the steel examination table, it snaps at her forceps. That bite changes the problem from an illegal release into a regional emergency. Authorities close the immediate harbor and deploy electro-fishing boats, trap nets, environmental DNA sampling, and underwater cameras. The first operation captures 18 piranhas. The second captures 4. The third captures none. Officials briefly hope the population is small, until genetic traces appear several miles from the release point. The fish are not staying together. They are dividing into schools and following warm corridors along the coast. Now containment becomes a battle against geography. The Great Lakes are not 5 separate bowls. Rivers, straits, canals, wetlands, and shipping routes connect much of the system. Lake Erie's outlet runs toward Lake Ontario, although Niagara Falls blocks a simple natural passage for fish. Westward movement is more dangerous. The Detroit River connects Erie to Lake St. Clair and then to Lake Huron. Artificial waterways offer other routes. Every marina, bait bucket, live well, and flood channel becomes a possible step beyond the original zone. But autumn is closing in. If the cold still works, the crisis ends by January. Maya's team fits several captured fish with acoustic tags and releases them inside a heavily monitored harbor zone. As the water temperature falls, the piranhas slow. At 50 degrees, their bursts become shorter. At 45, they stop chasing healthy adult perch. Yet they do not collapse. They settle near the bottom, conserve energy, and strike only when prey comes close. Their strategy has shifted from pursuit to ambush. The first ice seals the harbor in December. Beneath it, the lake is not a block of frozen water. Ice floats, insulating the liquid below. In deeper areas, dense water near 39 degrees Fahrenheit can persist through winter. Native fish are built for this season, but many reduce their movement and feeding. The piranhas now do the same, just well enough to survive. They gather around submerged structures, river mouths, and slightly warmer discharges. They are no longer a fast-moving swarm. They are pockets of waiting teeth. This is where the first version of the disaster changes. The piranhas do not erase millions of trout in a week. Lake Erie is too large, its prey too dispersed, and its predators too formidable. Northern pike, muskellunge, walleye, larger trout, cormorants, and herons can all kill an unfamiliar fish. Some piranhas become food, others starve. The invasion loses perhaps most of its original population. But most is not enough. In March, acoustic receivers detect 11 tagged survivors. Genetic sampling suggests many untagged fish have survived with them. The cold has filtered the population. The weakest are gone. The individuals left behind are the ones best able to endure winter, find thermal refuges, and ration energy. Human control efforts have not stopped evolution. They have helped select the next generation. Spring turns survival into expansion. As the shallows warm, piranhas return to the marshes at the exact moment native fish begin spawning. Walleye gather over reefs. Yellow perch release long ribbons of eggs. Bass and sunfish defend nests. Millions of young fish enter a world where their old defenses no longer match the new predator. The invaders do not need to kill the adult. They bite fins, raid nests, and consume juveniles in vegetation too dense for nets and too shallow for large patrol boats. For Maya, the crisis becomes personal. At a protected wetland where her team has restored spawning habitat for 6 years. She arrives before sunrise, expecting to see schools of young perch beneath the boardwalk. Instead, the water is filled with drifting egg membranes. A motion camera shows what happened overnight. Not a cinematic feeding frenzy, but repeated, efficient raids. A few piranhas draw the guarding fish away. Others enter from behind. By morning, an entire pocket of future fish has been converted into energy for the invader. That scene reveals the true threat. This is not a monster story measured in human bodies. It is a recruitment collapse measured in missing years. The first summer still looks almost normal to tourists. Charter boats leave the docks. Families swim inside marked beaches. Restaurants serve walleye. Yet beneath that familiar surface, the age structure of the ecosystem is breaking. Adults remain visible while juveniles disappear. It is like looking at a forest of mature trees after every seedling has been burned. The landscape seems alive until the old generation begins to fall. And the effects do not stop with fish. If small prey decline, terns, loons, and other fish-eating birds must travel farther to feed. Larger predators compete over fewer meals. Some turn more heavily toward the piranhas, but that does not guarantee rescue. An invasive species can become both predator and prey, locking itself into the food web instead of being removed from it. If the piranhas consume young sport fish while feeding larger predators, the lake may begin stabilizing around a poorer, stranger balance. Then comes the moment the public finally notices. In July, a swimmer near a crowded beach steps on a piranha trapped between rocks. The fish bites defensively and opens a deep wound across his foot. Days later, another person is bitten while handling a fish caught from a marina. Neither attack resembles the movie version. There is no skeleton rising through red water, but photographs of triangular wounds spread online faster than any official warning. Headlines announce killer piranhas in Lake Erie. Beaches empty. Charter cancellations surge. Every floating leaf becomes a fin. Fear now causes damage the fish have not. The Great Lakes support coastal tourism, recreational fishing, shipping, and communities whose identity is tied to the water. A single confirmed breeding population would trigger restrictions on bait transport, aquarium sales, live fish movement, and access to infected wetlands. Property owners would demand chemical treatment, anglers would demand open harvest, animal rights groups would challenge indiscriminate killing. 2 countries, multiple states, tribal nations, cities, and federal agencies would have to coordinate while the fish continue moving without permits or borders. Every control option carries a cost. Poison could clear a small, isolated pond, but treating a Great Lake is impossible and would kill native animals with the target. Electrical barriers may protect narrow canals, not thousands of miles of shoreline. Nets remove adults, but miss eggs and juveniles hidden in vegetation. Sterile male programs would take years to develop. Releasing another predator would risk repeating one ecological mistake with a second. Even environmental DNA can reveal that piranhas were present without telling crews exactly where the living fish are now. So Maya proposes a less dramatic strategy. Hold the invasion at the warm margins. Block artificial routes. Remove fish aggressively from spawning bays. Monitor thermal refuges through winter. Reward anglers for verified captures. Regulate the trade that made the release possible. Protect the coldest connections and hope the deeper lakes remain too harsh for reproduction. For a time, it works. Lake Superior is probably safe. Its vast, cold body offers fewer warm nursery zones and a brutal winter filter. Lakes Michigan and Huron are more uncertain, with productive coastal habitats connected by currents, ports, and human traffic. Lake Ontario is separated from Erie by Niagara Falls, but not from every human-assisted pathway. The invasion does not spread as a single red wave. It advances as scattered colonies, some failing, some vanishing for a year, some returning after everyone assumes they were gone. That uncertainty is more frightening than a visible swarm. A piranha outbreak can be filmed. An adaptation cannot. Each winter, researchers compare the survivors. Their bodies do not transform overnight, and no mysterious chemical spill rewrites them on command. Evolution works through inheritance and selection. If cold tolerance varies and the trait can be passed on, winter removes the vulnerable, while the survivors reproduce. After enough generations, the temperature line that once contained the species moves a little farther north. The second winter is colder than the first. Ice covers the western basin. Officials predict the population will crash. In April, Maya's team returns to the original harbor. The cameras show no fish. The nets remain empty. For 6 days, every test suggests the nightmare has ended. Then, a receiver beneath the ice records a tag that has been silent for 14 months. One pulse, then another. The signal is moving out of the harbor and toward open water. The fish carrying it is not alone. If cold-adapted piranhas ever invaded the Great Lakes, they would not drain them of life overnight. They would do something slower and more believable. Exploit warm edges, remove vulnerable young, survive in hidden refuges, and force an enormous ecosystem to reorganize around them. The lakes would fight back, with cold, distance, predators, and starvation. The question is whether those defenses would eliminate the invader or train it. What would you do? Poison the infected wetlands before the fish spread? Or protect native wildlife and risk leaving survivors behind? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe to What If Animals and watch the next dark evolution waiting beyond the shoreline. Because the most dangerous invasion is not the one that arrives perfectly adapted. It is the one that adapts after it arrives.